White receptionist deletes black CEO's reservation. Then learns who he really is. Marcus Reed stepped into the grand lobby of the Sterling Manhattan, one of the most prestigious hotels in New York City, a hotel he had built from the ground up. At 45 years old, he had spent decades perfecting his empire, ensuring that every guest experienced nothing short of excellence. But tonight, as he approached the front desk, he might as well have been invisible. The receptionist, a young woman named Ashley, sat behind the counter, lazily scrolling through her phone. The glow of the screen illuminated her face, her eyes barely flickering upward as Marcus approached. He waited for a greeting, some acknowledgement that he was standing there, but it never came. Instead, she sighed, exuding the kind of impatience reserved for unwanted interruptions. Clearing his throat, Marcus finally spoke. "Good evening. I have a reservation under Marcus Reed." Ashley barely reacted. With a slow, exaggerated motion, she set her phone down and began tapping at the keyboard. She didn't ask for his ID. She didn't confirm his booking details. She didn't even look at him. Instead, she typed a few keys, then exhaled dramatically. "Yeah, I don't see anything." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. He knew the reservation existed. He had personally confirmed it through the hotel's executive booking system. Yet, here he was, being dismissed like an inconvenience. "Can you check again?" he asked, keeping his voice calm. Ashley sighed again, this time louder, as if he was asking too much. Her fingers lazily skimmed the keyboard, more for show than actual effort. A few seconds later, she shrugged. "Nope. Nothing under that name." Marcus inhaled slowly, willing himself to stay composed. He had encountered this kind of behavior before. It wasn't a system error, it was deliberate. "Are you sure?" he pressed, maintaining eye contact. Ashley smirked slightly, leaning back in her chair. "The system doesn't lie," she said flatly. But Marcus knew better. The system didn't lie, people did. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out his phone and scrolled to his email. Within seconds, he found his confirmation. Turning the screen toward her, he held it up. "Here. My reservation. It was booked under my name." Ashley barely glanced at the screen before shrugging. "Well, if it's not in the system, there's nothing I can do." Marcus felt a slow, controlled anger settle in. It wasn't just bad service. It wasn't just incompetence. It was intentional exclusion. And tonight, she had picked the wrong guest to mistreat. For years, Marcus had trusted reports and numbers, believing his hotels upheld his standard of excellence. But standing here now, ignored, dismissed, and lied to, he saw the truth. There was a problem in his empire, and he had just found it. And if Ashley thought she could decide who belonged in his hotel, she was about to learn the hard way exactly who he was. Marcus didn't move. He stood at the front desk, his grip tightening around his phone as he stared at the receptionist. Ashley had dismissed him, lied to his face, and she thought she could get away with it. His first instinct was to push back, to demand a manager immediately, but something held him back. No. Not yet. He wanted to see just how deep this problem ran. With practiced calm, he slid his phone back into his pocket. "All right," he said, voice even. "If my reservation doesn't exist, then let's check the system together." Ashley's smirk faltered. "Sir, I already checked." "Then check again." His tone was steady, but there was something in it, something that made Ashley hesitate. She huffed, rolling her eyes like he was wasting her time, before tapping at the keyboard again. Another long sigh. Another shrug. "Yeah, no. Not there." Marcus studied her. She wasn't even trying. The disinterest in her voice, the flicker of satisfaction in her expression, this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't incompetence. This was personal. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his second phone, the one with direct access to the hotel's internal system. He unlocked it with a swipe, fingers moving fast as he navigated the reservation logs. And there it was. His booking. Confirmed. Logged. But manually deleted. His stomach tightened as he scrolled further. There, in clear, undeniable text, was the culprit's name. Deleted by Ashley Reynolds, front desk clerk. His eyes flicked up to her. She was back on her phone, completely oblivious, acting as if he had already given up and walked away. Not a chance. Keeping his voice calm, he tilted his head. "Tell me something, Ashley." She didn't even look up. What happens when a reservation is deleted?" She shrugged, still scrolling. "It's removed. No big deal." Marcus smirked. "And who has the power to delete reservations?" That finally made her pause. Her fingers stopped moving, her expression shifting ever so slightly. Only front desk staff." Like yourself?" His tone was light, but the weight in his words was unmistakable. Ashley's brows furrowed, her posture stiffening. "Yeah. Why?" Marcus turned his phone toward her, the glowing display facing her directly. Her eyes darted to the screen. She saw her name. She saw the deletion log. And she went completely still. For a split second, she said nothing. Then, her mouth opened, a weak, stammering attempt at an excuse. I didn't. Don't even try." She flinched. For the first time tonight, she looked nervous. Gone was the smug disinterest, the lazy attitude. Now, her face was pale, her breath uneven. Marcus straightened. "Here's what's going to happen." Ashley swallowed hard, hands gripping the desk. "You're going to fix this. Right now." Her fingers flew across the keyboard, panic replacing arrogance. But Marcus wasn't done. Because this was just the beginning. Ashley's fingers flew across the keyboard, her earlier smugness completely gone. Okay. Found a room. Here you go, sir." She grabbed a key card, shoved it across the counter without looking up, and kept her eyes glued to the screen like she could will herself out of this mess. Marcus didn't move. He didn't reach for the card. "Which room?" His voice was calm, but sharp enough to slice through the thick tension in the air. Ashley hesitated, just for a second, before forcing a tight-lipped smile. "Room 1427. Marcus inhaled slowly, already knowing exactly what she had done. Of course. Room 1427 was the worst room in the entire hotel. Noisy. Right by the elevators. Next to a maintenance closet. And instead of a breathtaking city view, it overlooked the dumpsters in the back alley. Ashley thought she was slick. Marcus finally picked up the key card, rolling it between his fingers as he studied her. "You sure about that?" Ashley stiffened. "Why yeah. That's all we have left." A blatant lie. His hotel was nowhere near full. He had personally checked the booking data earlier that day. The air in the lobby shifted. Other guests had started paying attention. A bellboy in the corner adjusted his hat, suddenly very interested in the ceiling. A couple waiting in line exchanged glances. Marcus sighed, slipping the key card into his pocket. "Thanks, Ashley." His voice was smooth, unreadable. He turned and walked away, feeling the weight of eyes following him. But this wasn't over. Not even close. Upstairs, Marcus didn't unpack. He had work to do. Dropping into the chair at the sleek mahogany desk, he flipped open his laptop. Within seconds, he was deep in the hotel's internal system, pulling up every guest complaint, every staff report, every misconduct log. And just like that, the real picture came into focus. Ashley's name was everywhere. Guests complaining about lost reservations. Reports of rude and dismissive behavior. Suspicious errors that only seemed to happen to certain guests. This wasn't just one mistake. This wasn't a bad day. This was a pattern. And management? They had done nothing. Frowning, Marcus clicked into the staff profiles, scrolling until he found the hotel manager's name. David Collins. A yes man. The kind who avoided problems rather than fixing them. Translation? Ashley had been a problem for a long time, and David had let it slide. Well, that changed tonight. Marcus shut his laptop and stood, adjusting the cuffs of his blazer. Ashley had played her little power game at the front desk. Now, it was time for her to learn exactly who she had been playing with. And David? He was about to learn, too. Marcus moves through the hallways of his hotel with quiet, deliberate steps. His mind was already made up. Ashley wasn't the real problem. She was just a symptom of a much bigger issue, one that had been allowed to fester under the watch of David Collins, the hotel's so-called manager. That was about to change. Pushing open the office door without knocking, Marcus stepped inside. David looked up from his desk, startled. The man was in his early 50s, balding slightly, wearing a suit that looked more expensive than his management skills probably warranted. "Mr. Reed." What a surprise. His voice was too cheerful, too eager. I didn't know you were visiting this location tonight." Marcus shut the door behind him. "Cut the crap, David. We need to talk." David's smile wavered. He swallowed hard. "Oh, of course. What can I do for you?" Marcus didn't sit. Instead, he leaned against the desk, leveling his gaze at the man who had let his hotel turn into a disaster. "Do you know what's happening at your front desk?" David paled. His mouth opened, then closed. He let out a nervous chuckle. "Well, I believe everything is running smoothly." Marcus arched a brow. "Is that right?" He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and with a few swipes, brought up the guest complaint reports. He turned the screen toward David. watching as the man's eyes darted over the long list of incidents, accusations, and unresolved issues. David's face drained of color. I can explain. Marcus didn't let him. I just had my own reservation deleted by one of your employees. David froze. His entire body went stiff, like a man hearing his own death sentence. Who? He stammered. Marcus smirked. Take a wild guess. David swallowed hard. Ashley? Ding, ding, ding. Marcus crossed his arms. Now tell me, David, how many times has she pulled this stunt before? David floundered. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Marcus shook his head, exhaling slowly. You knew, didn't you? Silence. You knew exactly what kind of employee she was, and you did nothing. David's throat bobbed. I was going to handle it. Marcus held up a hand. Shut up, David. The manager went silent. Marcus straightened, letting the weight of the moment settle. Here's how this is going to work. David swallowed. Of course, Mr. Reed. Anything. Marcus locked eyes with him. You're going to walk out there and fire her. Right now. In front of everyone. David's jaw dropped. But, now? In the middle of the lobby? Now. And 2 minutes later, under the watchful eyes of staff and guests, Ashley was fired on the spot. She argued. She cried. She begged. It didn't matter. She was out. And as she stormed toward the exit, she shot one last hateful glare over her shoulder at Marcus. He just smiled. Because she still had no idea who he really was. But soon, she would. Marcus stood near the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse suite, looking down at the entrance of his own hotel. Ashley was gone. She had stormed out minutes ago, her face still twisted in shock and humiliation. David Collins, the so-called manager, had done exactly as he was told. He had fired her, right there in the lobby, in front of guests, employees, and anyone else who happened to be watching. But this wasn't just about one receptionist. It never was. Marcus exhaled slowly, turning back to his laptop. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he pulled up everything: employee records, performance reviews, guest feedback, internal complaints. And just like that, the truth became crystal clear. This wasn't just one bad employee. This was an infection. Ashley had been unchecked for far too long. And why? Because David had been too much of a coward to handle it. He had ignored the red flags, covered up complaints, and let people like her decide who did and didn't belong in Marcus's hotel. That ended tonight. His phone buzzed. A message from corporate. Board members. Questions. Panic. Marcus smirked, ignoring them all. Let them sweat. He wasn't going to give them an explanation. He was going to give them results. Flipping through the reports, Marcus made a list. A long one. Employees who had failed to uphold the hotel's reputation. Managers who had looked the other way. Staff members who had forgotten what real hospitality meant. There would be no more second chances. Excellence wasn't just built, it was enforced. And if they didn't meet the standard, they were gone. His empire had slipped out of his control for 4 years. 4 years of trusting reports, spreadsheets, and polished corporate updates that told him what he wanted to hear. But numbers didn't tell the whole story. Standing at the front desk, invisible in his own hotel, had told him everything he needed to know. Marcus shut his laptop. He was done looking at problems. Now, it was time to fix them. Tomorrow, David would be next. And after that? Every weak link, every excuse maker, every employee who had forgotten that they worked in a 5-star hotel, not some cheap roadside motel, would follow. Because this wasn't just about one location. It was about the culture. The Sterling brand meant something. It stood for excellence, luxury, respect. And Marcus Reed wasn't about to let anyone forget that. His phone buzzed again. He finally picked it up. Get the corporate team on a call first thing in the morning. His voice was calm, controlled. We're making some changes. Effective immediately. A pause. Then, the reply came through. Yes, sir. Marcus smiled. Damn right. What do you think about this story? Have you ever witnessed or experienced something similar, where someone was mistreated, underestimated, or judged unfairly, only for the truth to come out in the end? If you were in Marcus's shoes, how would you have handled the situation? Stories like this remind us that power isn't just about money or status, it's about how you use it. Marcus didn't just build his empire, he protected it. He could have ignored the complaints, stayed in his corporate office, and let things slide. But real leadership means stepping in when it matters most. Now, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts. Do you think Ashley got what she deserved? Should Marcus have handled things differently? And what about David, the manager who let all of this happen? Your opinions matter, and we love reading them. So don't just watch, be part of the conversation. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss out on more real-life power moves like this one. Now, let's talk. Comment below, rocket, fire.